Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
All right, listeners, it is time to jump into a What's Working in Ag segment. This is kind of neat because this is almost to the root of everything that could be working in ag. I'm excited to have Brad Hahn here, senior partner with Dryshod, to kind of talk about what goes on your feet matters and how that ultimately affects your farm. Brad, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Good morning. How are you doing today?
Hey, we're great, and small world, listeners. We realize that we're less than 20 minutes apart right now, yet we're doing this virtually. So next time we get Brad in, he's going to get to see the Farm for Profit studio. So really excited to have you here. First of all, introduce yourself to our listeners. Who's Brad?
Yeah, I'm Brad Hahn. I'm one of the owners of Dryshod. In this space, this rubber neoprene space, I have over 25 years of experience, including my other four partners have also been in the rubber neoprene game for 25 years. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So how do you get into an industry like that?
It's a small world. It really is. So me and my partners were sales agencies and distributors for the original Muck Boot Company, dating all the way back to 1998. We marketed that, we sold that brand, we distributed that brand for just about 20 years before a previous owner, I won't mention them by name, but they got rid of us. And we're kind of cleaning up distribution a little bit with, I think, in hopes to eventually sell it to another company, which that ended up happening. But anyways, so we found ourselves February of 2017 going, wow, we know this category very well. We feel like there's some shortcomings in this category that nobody's doing. And we really felt like we had the team to launch a new brand, even though this space is very competitive.
Right.
So we made the decision. We took 6 months and basically threw some new models out. Well, I guess I'm going to back up just a little bit. Before the four of us that were in the distribution, the sales game of this, we were missing one key ingredient, and that was a designer. So we actually went back and called Jim Donahue. Jim Donahue was the guy that originally created, owned, operated the Muck Boot Company from 1998 to 2004 when he sold his interest. When we called Jim, he said, guys, I've been waiting 10 years for this opportunity. I am ready to go. So this is Jim's 2.0 version,
Sure.
Basically. And just like, I was listening to your guys' podcast a little bit, some past episodes this morning. It's almost like that field that you're not sure whether you need a tile, that always keeps getting wet every single year. Whenever you do something twice, you get better.
Yeah.
From that perspective. So we spent 6 months kind of creating some styles and some designs. And then we launched January of 2018. So we just completed 5 years of business. We have about 3,200 customers across the country.
Wow.
Here in the U.S. We have distribution in Canada, and we really, our motto is Dryshod is the most wearable rubber boot, the world's most wearable rubber boot, excuse me. And I really feel like we live up to that name. I know for the last 4 years, we have a marketing booth at the FFA convention in Indianapolis, and the amount of young people we touch and even advisors that come up to us and say, my current product just isn't getting it done anymore. Why is yours different? And when we tell our story and they try our product on, they're just like, wow, this takes me back 20 years to an original product that used to be out there.
Yeah, that's interesting, because having grown up on a hog farm myself, and I know that both Corey and Dave spent a lot of time in rubber boots. I mean, just for the general term of go throw your rubbers on, that you're right. It just seems like in that category for a while that cracked boots, worn out, rub thin, especially if you were trying to shove your foot in and out of it on a frequent basis, going between different barns, that I could see where you guys are seeing success in an industry that feels full, but the quality might be missing.
Yeah, and that's exactly how we feel. We definitely make a very comfortable boot, and the durability of what the end user is telling us. The durability is there. They're getting longer use out of any other product out there on the marketplace.
Right. So
go ahead.
Yeah, before we get too deep into that, I want to know, why should this matter to our listeners? We're Farm for Profit. Everything we talk about here is to help our listeners achieve higher levels of profitability. Why talking boots affects a bottom line? How's that fit?
It's a tool in the toolbox. Whether you're using a tractor or a new seeder or a new sprayer, it's all tools in the toolbox. Comfort matters. Okay. If you look at all the new tractors that are out there, everything's designed around comfort. Mm-hmm. Heck, I think most of them drive themselves anymore, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just from listening to my kids, it's all computers, it's all electronics, and that's there to save seed, to save spray, the whole bit, to increase the bottom line. If you're comfortable, if you have less fatigue, you can work longer hours.
Yeah, you're not saving spray, you're saving your body. If you
Absolutely.
Correct, if you can stand and achieve more throughout the day. And I'll tell you what, obviously listeners, Dryshod sent us some stuff here on the podcast to try. I threw their mudslingers on fresh out of the box, and then Corey and I went mushroom hunting for over 3 hours. Right out of the box in a pair of rubber boots, and I had no problems with the comfort. Now, obviously, I don't know the durability. I can't attest to the durability yet, but so far the comfort has definitely been there. So now, tell our listeners why that comfort is there. What are you doing different than the other boots?
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned the Mudslinger. That's the boot. We're 20 miles apart. It rained most of the weekend. I did a ton of yard work, pressure wash. That's the boot that I wore all weekend. And I kicked myself because me and one of my sons went up to a figure 8 race up in Fort Dodge.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't even think about throwing my boots in the truck. And I regretted it because it was a muddy, sloppy mess. So that would have been a perfect boot for that. But here's what we're doing different. It's all about the features that we put on our footwear. So if I go through just kind of the basic things that make us a little bit different, Number one is we put more emphasis on tread.
Yep.
Okay. So if you're not slipping and sliding, it's a safety issue. This tread is our number one tread, or our number one sole. It has heavy lugs on the outside to help you grip that mud better, or manure, whatever you're in. It has more tread coming through the middle, more traction. And then we have all these little cone spikes on here to help push the debris out. The cleaner the tread is, the more grip you're going to have to the ground. Okay. We actually do a molded sole. Okay. So the biggest difference between a molded sole and the most economical way that you can produce this type of footwear, this is a calendared bottom. This is like cookie dough. You're rolling it out with a rolling pin. You notice you get very little grip to the ground with that, as opposed to this product.
Right.
Okay. So with that is you have a good grip. This works good for mud, rocky terrain, or hard surfaces. It's a gum rubber. And this is our number one selling item. It's called the Haymaker.
Yep.
Okay. The other big thing that we do is we put a shock absorber right through the middle, like a true leather work boot would have. So there's a EVA cushion all through here that acts just like a shock absorber on the car. Gives you extra bounce, extra cushion. To complement that, we also put a shank in there. Any high-performance work boot is going to have some kind of arch support and a shank in there. That's probably one of the biggest things that people notice when they put their foot into our product, is that extra arch support.
Right.
Okay. If your arch is supported, you get longer comfort throughout the day. All right. With this sole, we also do this fancy little heel kick, and this heel kick is dominant on about 80% of our product line, and it's a little, it's almost like a personal boot jack. If that is manured up or caked with mud, nobody wants to grab it. So it gives you a boot jack to peel it right off your foot.
Right.
Okay. One of our big things is we do a tight ankle fit. With that tight ankle fit, your foot's not slopping around as you're walking. You're not rising up and down in the boot. It's holding your ankle. We also do a torsion board through the bottom of this boot to give that sole a lot more rigidity. It's almost like it's a puncture-proof plate.
Right.
Not calling it puncture-proof, but it is puncture resistant. And one of the biggest things that we do on the inside of the boot is we put a breathable lining. Neoprene doesn't breathe. Rubber doesn't breathe. But if we complement that with something that creates airflow, your foot is a more neutral temperature throughout the product. And that is accomplished with these tiny little fibers that go vertical. So there's an actual air pocket on the inside of the boot for air to flow throughout the footwear.
Nice. So I'll tell you what, when my dad came down this last weekend, I got him a pair of the Mudslingers again.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing, so he failed to finish all of his life and still finishes hogs. So spent a lot of time on his feet in rubber boots, AIing sows, castrating, processing. And the first thing he said when he slipped his foot into it in the house was, "Oh, that's comfortable." And I think it had to do, like you said, with the tight ankle fit and that extra arch support. He obviously wears rubber boots for a living. I just thought that was kind of neat that came out of his mouth with no expectation, just receiving a new pair of boots.
Just try this on.
Yeah.
That's awesome. The other thing that we're doing is pretty cool that nobody else in this category has done is we actually waterproof our neoprene.
Huh.
Neoprene's like a sponge.
Yep.
It soaks water in it. If you have any other brand of boots out there, you know what I'm talking about, is the liquid. If you're around cattle and there's urine, what have you, it soaks in. And one of the problems with that is it soaks in, it deteriorates the seams, or it delaminates that vulcanized bond here. So we take, this is water, it's not a Coors Light or anything. Everybody thinks it's just an aluminum bottle. But so we put a sealant on our neoprene shell on the nylon cover there that doesn't let water soak in. So as I pour water on here, and this,
just beat it up.
nothing soaks in.
Right.
Okay. Now with that, if you hit it with a direct stream at the same spot over and over, you're going to push through that membrane. But under direct contact, it's not soaking in. So you're never drying out wet, soggy boots, or you're not getting that liquid soak into the seams. So, and we do some pretty unique features, like this Haymaker is what most of our styles are built off of. In that same model, we have a little bit taller boot with a gusseted back.
Yep.
I'm a huge fan of the gussets. Not that I have athletic calves, but they're so much easier to put on because you have that much more room
in the back. Yep.
For jeans, bulky clothing. The other thing I like about the gusseted models is on those warmer days, you can open this flange up and let that hot air escape, keeping your foot a little bit cooler.
Huh. Who'd have thought, listeners, that we'd have a conversation around boots? I'll tell you what, Brad, in the beginning of the podcast, I never thought I'd do an episode that involved talking about footwear. But when you realize how important it is to what everybody wears, I'm a little bit of an anomaly because I could throw on a pair of dress shoes when I come into the bank. I can throw on a pair of work boots when I'm going around town. I can throw my cowboy boots on. I don't spend an all day in a pair of shoes, or let alone a pair of boots like a lot of our listeners do, to realize how just important that comfort and durability is.
Absolutely.
So if our listeners want to go look up and find what these boots are all about, I know you've got a ton of videos out there also. How do they go about finding you guys?
They can pull us up on our website, dryshodusa.com. On that, there's boots for sale, or there's a dealer locator where they can actually find somebody in their area that they can go look at the boots, touch, feel, because nobody wants to buy a new piece of footwear without touching or feeling it. So that's what I recommend is go out and find somebody around you that is stocking the product and go try a pair on. You'll be a true believer once you slip your foot in that.
Yeah, and I would say, I would echo to go try them on as well. I mean, I love the way they are. I probably would have ordered a size smaller. They do seem like they run on the big side of the size chart that's out on the website. So if you are just going to order them sight unseen, keep that in mind. But other than that, yeah, go touch, feel, put your foot in it. I think our listeners will really be pleased. Brad, this was a pleasure. We appreciate it. Dry shod stands for something, right? What's shod mean?
It means dry feet.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Old biblical. Yeah. So it's dry feet, basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, if you want to keep your feet dry and you want to be comfortable while it's happening, check out Dry Shod. But Brad, thanks again for being a part of our What's Working in Ag segment today.
Thanks, Tanner. I appreciate you taking the time and learning more about our company. Thank you.